Okay, well, here we go with another Departures Lounge episode. And welcome everybody to our show today. My name is Kathy Scott. I'm the Chief Exploration Officer, as I like to call myself, of Departures Travel in Victoria, BC. And I'm also the co-owner of Departures Travel in Sydney, along with Kathy Larson, who's on the call with us again today. And what we are doing with Departures Lounge events is just sharing all things new and exciting in the world of travel. And right now, of course, we can't travel internationally, so we like to share things with you to inspire you with our love of travel and all things new and interesting. And today we have a guest from Vancouver Island, because we know while we're not likely to be able to travel internationally for the next while, we will be able to start traveling on our own beautiful island before too long. And I had the privilege of traveling with Dave and his group last year on a wonderful camping kayaking trip. It was, when I say camping, it was glamping, really beautiful. And he's going to go through that whole trip with us today and tell us all about it, how he got started and why he does what he does. So Dave, welcome today. And it's Dave from West Coast Expeditions. And I'd like you to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Kathy. And Kathy, great to be with you today. What a treat. And yeah, we're spending so much time thinking about the summer and still feeling unsure about what is ahead this summer through all of the related COVID-19 measures and acting responsibly and together with our friends and family in the remote area of Cayucit. So lots of question marks about the season. That said, lots of exciting things to share and maybe a chance to travel from home and think ahead for when it does work to join us and hopefully join us with you. We had so much fun last year.
It was great. And I'm really hoping that, as you say, you're not sure if it's going to happen this year, but if it does, I'll be there for sure. Looking forward to it. And if not, then next year is another year.
Yeah, that's giant. Shall I start to go through some slides just introducing people to the area?
Please do.
Excellent. And throughout, there's going to be lots of images of people exploring a new place and what may be one of the most remote locations you can reach on Vancouver Island while staying essentially on Vancouver Island and having a distinct cultural and wilderness experience and opportunity to connect with yourself and others and the place. There will also be a lot of photos of sea otters and this really is sea otter country. It's the sea otter coast, and it's sea otters being a keystone species that link the west coast of Vancouver Island with the central coast and north coast of British Columbia and stretching up into Alaska and further down into the California coast. So it truly is the sea otter coast and quite a story associated with them. Just a picture of otters in a raft here. Just minutes away from our camp. Do you remember seeing them, Kathy?
It was so amazing. And the noise, like they're quite chattery.
Yeah, they're not quiet creatures. If we stop talking, we can hear a lot going on. And I don't know if you got the chance to hear them from your tent at night either.
Totally. Yeah. I remember them about 4 a.m. breaking their little the clamshells or whatever they were breaking there.
Yeah. So this is an aspirational photo, me with hair. But we do spend a lot of time exploring the shoreline, learning about kelps and the kelp and the intertidal life, all the algae and associated biodiversity are directly linked with the sea otter population in the Cayucit area. And it's roughly, in round numbers, 2,000 sea otters in our neighborhood. So a few themes I'll touch on maybe, or you might want to ask me about, have to do with the cultural and ecological context of where we are on northwestern Vancouver Island for our tours. And though that's where we spend time exploring, we actually meet our guests in the Comox Valley or Campbell River and include that transportation as part of it to get to this remote location. And hopefully feel a bit of a connection, either a reconnection if you've been to Cayucit before or have looked into it before, or first time connection if you're thinking it could be a neat place to explore. So open to questions throughout.
Great.
A little video here that is might be a bit choppy as it streams to people, but it hasn't got music, so don't worry, you're not missing out on a spectacular soundtrack. But this was largely drone footage and some other footage from some Vancouver Island videographers, photographers with us last season from Arctica Studios out of Nanaimo. And just helps us arrive in the place. This is Spring Island, where our camp is. It's roughly 4 kilometers from the rural village of Cayucot, which has about 200 people living there year round. Our camp, it's seasonally occupied, sort of Gilligan's Island meets Swiss Family Robinson meets upscale camping, where we're really comfortable regardless of the conditions. And our guests don't necessarily have to identify as campers or kayakers to enjoy an experience out there. Meanwhile, for people who've done lots of camping and kayaking, it's often an off the charts treat for them to have the really diverse paddling on our doorstep, getting into estuary environments, open coastal areas, and all leaving from the shelter of the bay in front of our camp. And even just walking around the island, it's roughly 1.2 square kilometers, and can spend many hours exploring the forest trails on the island or the shoreline. And it's got many of the same features that, as you can see here, that make things like the Nootka Trail or West Coast Trail super special. And it's right on our doorstep. Whether it's through questions in this call or follow-up from people, just want to flag a few things from my past that might already be a connection with people who are following this today or later. I grew up in Canada in the Ottawa Valley and have lived at various times in the Victoria area, Hamilton when I was at McMaster University for my undergraduate, University of Guelph, also Southern Ontario. I've lived more than in News Parksville area, and currently based out of the Comox Valley in Courtenay. So I guess I got introduced to the West Coast when I was a student at Pearson College. I was already familiar with marine environments from the Atlantic coast and family holidays, and a bit of a marine biology geek and loved being on the water. But Pearson College really hooked me on the West Coast of BC. And I've been involved with West Coast expeditions since '95, with note that the company started in 1972. So over 48 years old, one of the oldest companies on the coast focused on marine education and doing that through kayaking tours since 1990. The part of what's distinct about West Coast expeditions is our relationship with the Cayucot Checklisut Nation, where ourselves, our family, and previous owners have all had very close, continuous links, unbroken links with community members, and that is part of what we bring to our guest experience and part of what enables our experience and even being there. Our camp is on treaty settlement land, the land of the Cayucot Checklisut Nations through the Manulf Treaty. So it's all part of modern history, fresh history, and where we're moving with relationships in Canada. Besides our company, I work with North Island College here in Courtenay with adventure tourism, adventure guiding programs, and Aboriginal ecotourism. So Cayucot is, it's got places that are, maybe people are familiar with Checklisut Bay Ecological Reserve. We're right on the edge of Checklisut Bay Ecological Reserve, the largest marine ecological reserve in BC, and where the sea otters were reintroduced after having been wiped out or extirpated on the BC coast in the 1920s. They were reintroduced in the late 60s, early 70s, and from a population of roughly 89 otters that were brought from northwestern Alaska. We now have a population of about 2,000 otters in the Cayucot area and over 7,000 otters on the coast of BC are the rough numbers that I'll give for a sense of that success story in the renewal on the sea otter coast as a keystone species, and the positive influence on not just the marine habitat, but the shoreline, and also having impacts on the forest habitat too, and that full ecological diversity. It's just one of our guides tucked in for a pensive moment in the old growth forest right behind where our tents are. So we'll work with a range of guests from couples, young families, seniors, and right on through international, domestic, lots of guests from Vancouver Island, and many keen to join us this season if we're able to open. In this photo, some of our Cayucet family from, it's Lana Jules in the gray hoodie, who is daughter of Chris Jules, and their family has been doing, hosting cultural salmon dinners with us in camp since about 1992. And Lana took over about 8 or 9 years ago from her mother, who was my adopted mother. And it's a treat through the week. What do you have any fresh or fond memories from that, Kathy?
I think that probably was one of the highlights, and not just the absolutely spectacular salmon that had been just freshly caught that morning, which, I mean, it was probably the best salmon I've ever had, but it was just the experience of them coming, and they boated over. There was a dog, and the kids came, and quite a few of the family members came with them. And what was really neat was they were sharing their stories of resilience and stories of just the happiness of their families and some of the struggles they've been through. It was just such a amazing time. It was one of the most amazing evenings ever on the coast for me. And certainly Cayucet, I'd never even heard of it, which I lived most of my life on Vancouver Island. I was born here. I was born in Victoria. So, I mean, it was such a neat experience to meet fellow British Columbians and fellow Islanders that had such deep history and roots. So it was really lovely to meet Lana and her family.
And I know Lana so very much enjoys those interactions, those visits, and it's just an unscripted conversation, right? Where we're together, and over Lana's left shoulder here is her granddaughter Ayana, who splits her time between Campbell River with her mother and as much as possible with her grandmother out in Cayucet. So through adoption into the Jules family and family relationships, I'm grandpa to Ayana.
Oh, lovely. And she was I think she was mastering her cartwheels on the lawn.
Very likely, yeah. The meadow there is a perfect place to play in the evening sun and visit. And also in this photo is Nicole, who joined us last season with her partner, Nicholas. Nicholas was our camp chef from Germany. Nicole, in her German life, is an emergency room nurse, but they were both here on a work permit for the year, and they're now back in Germany. But Nicole was our camp assistant, and
total delight. Yeah. Really lovely.
We both chose the word delight.
Yeah.
So just a quick map of where is this place, Cayucet, and so up on the northwest upper left corner of Vancouver Island here, where there's a little fancy tent symbol. That's the rough area that we're exploring, just south of the Brooks Peninsula, that sticky outy bit, that pointy bit off the northwest coast of Vancouver Island. So the Brooks Peninsula might be another familiar name, or Rugged Point Provincial Marine Park. This area is accessed through Fair Harbor. So it's from when we meet our guests in Courtney or Campbell River, it's roughly a 4 to 5 hour drive to Fair Harbor, including an 1.5 to 2 hours on gravel road, and then a 1 hour boat ride out to our camp. So there's a lot of effort getting there, and guests will typically be with us for 4 to 6 days, and we do some expedition style trips that are a bit longer for more experienced kayakers who don't want the base camp comforts throughout. But it's once we get there, we just immerse in the place. And I know it was a big trip for you from Victoria, Kathy, but hopefully felt worthwhile.
Oh, it was fantastic. And the drive even was quite magical, because the countryside up in that area is so different than what we experienced. And what was really fun was there was a number of us on that trip that were business owners and usually pretty stuck to our devices. And as we got further and further away, all of a sudden the bars were going down on the phone, and then all of a sudden that was it. It was gone for the rest of the trip, and it was so great to be disconnected like that. It's just absolutely lovely.
It's an unusual moment, and in hyper contrast to what many of us are experiencing right now.
Yeah.
Working from home and relying so heavily on the internet, which we're very grateful for experiences like this right now. So it's this paradox of the digital connection. But once we get to Cayucet, we're not on Wi-Fi or cell signal on Spring Island. So the phones come out only for photos, maybe taking a few notes.
Yeah, that was
however
it.
people use their device. So one of our first outings with your group, Kathy, we went over to this was actually on Hatish, which is just a short paddle from our island, but some of the most spectacular tide pools and intertidal life on the coast.
Yeah, so pristine.
Marianne and Lynn and Beverly. getting hands-on with the rare purple urchin, and people might go, oh, sea urchin, big deal. We see those everywhere. We take those for granted living on Vancouver Island, but in Cayuga, sea urchins are actually very precious and rare. Precious and rare in that when the sea otters are present in an ecosystem, one of their first and favorite foods is the sea urchin. And when they eat the sea urchin, that controls the urchin population and allows kelp beds and algae to properly recover and have that canopy, that habitat for huge diversity of marine life, whether it's marine invertebrates, the various crabs and nudibranchs and whatnot, or smaller fish that are part of that food chain with larger fish. So we've got a few urchins tucked away in a few hiding spots up higher tide levels and in crevices. So we got to share some of that. So
it's our group.
Yeah, really fun memories of them.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun.
And it was a treat that Hannah, who's sitting in the front, through a connection with one of the women from your group, actually found some part-time winter work, seasonal work, while she was otherwise been studying
Fantastic.
at U of Vic. So these connections are you can never you can set up situations where they happen, but never guess where they'll go, and really appreciative of that. And so we have a range of paddling options, and we'll adjust it each day depending on weather conditions, sea conditions, group energy, group interests from the base camp, because we're coming and going from established safari style canvas tents with beds each day. We're not spending the time packing up, and we're also not forced to paddle or feeling like we've got to move from place A to place B. One of our outings, we will typically try to get into the village area of Walters Cove and the Cayuga village. And on our walk on Walters Island, we came across this one otter who has called this little cove home and has a feeding routine through the shallows of the cove, eating crabs and clams, and otherwise is resting for about a third of the day. So we were on a boardwalk, a gangway to a dock up above, and what were there? Were there maybe 8 of us or 9 of us, Kathy,
yeah,
looking down on the otter? And how far away do you remember it being? Maybe
it wasn't that far. I mean, that wasn't with a telescopic lens or anything. That's just a snapshot that you took. But yeah,
it's on my iPhone.
yeah, it was great. And I remember the little otter had it had a bottle, and it was smacking its oysters or clams or whatever on that bottle to open it. It was quite opportunistic.
Exactly. Yeah. So they'll use a tool. They'll either have a rock, and sometimes get more creative with a bottle, and they'll, when they dive down to get a clam, for example, they'll then take that rock out of a skin flap or pouch in their armpit area and onto their sternum, and then crack the shell open on the rock, and then tuck the rock away. So, as you, Kathy, paddling through the arch just around the corner from our camp, and getting into the forest behind the tents. This is about 5 or 6 minute walk from our tents, and getting into old growth Western red cedar that's well over 1,000 years old. And
yeah, it's quite stunning.
A few people visiting the inner workings of the cedar, as it's in the decline stage of its life, so gradually rotting from the inside out. But this tree is still also alive, which is fascinating. So Catherine,
I love that one.
Yeah, great seeing everyone's transformation through the trip. And if on the first night we'd said, hey, let's do this, it might have been less comfortable than on the 3rd or 4th day.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when we're out with guests, try to connect with the area and the protected areas and the territory and the cultural and community story of the Cayuga-Checklisut First Nation and other residents, and support initiatives, local aspirations, and really pause to take it all in rather than a go itinerary. And we have flexibility to adjust that for each group, whether it's intertidal life and being fascinated by the purple shore crabs and focusing on photography. These are some images by Isabel Grock, who I was on. She's a Vancouver-based photographer, originally from France 20 years ago. Just on the phone with her this morning for about 45 minutes. And we've been working together for about 5 years, working on photo tours. And she's done some articles in British Columbia magazine and is actually looking to join us with a journalist and videographer from Radio-Canada to document her work.
Wow, that's stunning.
We share the mission group of islands. So Spring Island's part of the mission group. We share it intermittently with anywhere from 1 or 2 occasional coastal wolves to sometimes a small pack. Isabel, who I mentioned, has recently published a couple of books that are aimed at a youth reader, but focused on ecosystems and endangered species, and drawing a lot of stories and images from the Cayucot area in her time with us. So these have freshly been released. This is a neat image of I'd never seen this until last summer, an albino river otter.
Wow.
River otters are different than the sea otters, and we sometimes get the chance to see both on the trips, and people in Victoria or wherever they're tuning in from will be often much more familiar with river otters, who scamper about on land and are very agile on land and eat a mix of fish and other shellfish. But this young family of river otters has this albino river otter. We had a major double take.
Wow, yeah, it's beautiful.
If people are really keen on sea otters, wolves, there's some incredible documentary footage in a production called Wild Canadian Year that was on CBC's Nature of Things. And in the spring episode, which was the first episode, at the 23-minute point, and I think about the 45-minute point, there's 2 5-minute sections that feature incredible footage from the Cayucot area, and that's available online for free through CBC, Wild Canadian Year in spring. These are some wolf pups that in 2014 or 15, a pack of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pups that we shared the island with their parents, a pack of 10, and they were fantastic neighbors. So here they are, captured with a motion sensor camera at a pinch point on the backside of Spring Island. And incredible neighbors. So they've since moved on and the pack has thinned out, but it's at the 37-minute mark in Wild Canadian Year that there's the documentary footage of wolves. A brief clip here, and I'll talk as it warms up, but this is from our kayaker perspective. This was shot with an 8K video setup from a boat platform, but then zooms into the wolf perfectly camouflaged on the shoreline, minutes away from our camp. And I just love how the tan and the brown and the black and the reds are just right in there with the driftwood and the shoreline, the kelps, the stones, etc.
Beautiful.
They'll see more of us than we see of them, and when our best interaction is having space for us to do our activities, there to do their activities. There's great foraging on the island, and the wolves have for a period were also hunting sea otters, which is a unique story, and we probably don't have time to get into it, but it's explored a little bit in that Wild Canadian Year documentary, and we certainly discuss it. The sea otters, we don't get this close. We'll keep a 100-meter viewing distance unless they themselves swim a little bit closer to us, but they'll be constantly grooming. This otter is sort of in this fused grooming resting phase when it's not feeding, conserving energy. Basically, the sea otters are consuming about a quarter of their body weight each day to fuel their engine, to warm their inner downy layer of fur, which is then kept waterproof and dry within this outer guard fur layer. So a double coat like a husky, and the thickest coat of any mammal. So, and just another short clip of an otter out in the swell, tucked in with the kelp, feeding away. So they're They're constant motion machines when feeding and otherwise grooming to keep their fur clean so that they stay dry and warm and aren't exposed to hypothermia. Oh, there we go. An otter with, this is a female otter with a nearly weaned pup. So this pup would be, I'm guessing, 4 or 5 months old, or towards that 4 or 5 month period where it will, if it's male, will go join the raft of male otters or stick with the female otters who congregate quite separately. And we don't get as close to the female otters, partially their location and conditions, but also for all the energy that the females expend caring for their pups and just really giving them that space. So yeah, we touched on many things there. I may not have taken adequate breath for questions, but I can pause right now if there's any questions around anything I've discussed, Kathy.
I don't think I have any major questions. I mean, I learned so much when I was on the island. But I guess my biggest question to you is when you first came to the island and you sort of started down this path of working with ecotourism and getting into the kayaking, what was the biggest draw for you and what's been the biggest surprise?
Yeah, interesting. I was drawn to it. The area just spoke to me. The welcoming, understated nature of the local residents who, after a few years of returning, were always, "Oh, welcome home, Dave," as I returned each summer to be a guide with West Coast Expeditions. And since we've become owners with our family and one of my adopted sisters, so another a Cayucet family member, Bev, who is right now in Cayucet at home caring for her 98-year-old mother, who's an elder in the community. I was just really drawn to that sense of community, that very real part of the Canadian, the evolving Canadian story, and the opportunity for cultural sharing and co-learning and collaboration and unintentionally for your question, but at the bottom of the screen, I've got Hishukich Sawak, we are all connected. And that's a foundational worldview perspective for the Nuu-chah-nulth people on the west coast of Vancouver Island. And we are all connected isn't just that people are connected, but that people are part of ecology and connected with the trees, connected with the fish, connected with the otters, and we're experiencing that connection more than ever as we all adjust and learn through COVID-19 and see just how deeply connected everything is, for better or for worse, including ways that we're going to work through it. And so I get that microcosm of relationships and awareness in Cayucet that I guess brings an acute focus to it, and a sense of community and family and place that we then get to share with guests. And that feels quite, it's restorative, it's magical, and in the Canadian and in the world experience.
Yeah, it was a profound experience for all of us. And I think, what was really neat about being there was to see, first of all, there were some of the ladies, a couple of the women that were with us that had never kayaked. So it doesn't matter. We sort of go as fast or as slow as we need to. And there's plenty, some days people would stay back and enjoy, but the kayaking was absolutely phenomenal. And I've done a fair bit of kayaking over the years. This was absolutely the best of the best, but it was so much more than the kayaking. It was the deep conversations with the local people, the Indigenous women that came on board, the children, even the dog. The dog was just adorable. And just the time to decompress and really get to take in and appreciate where we live. Because really this is not far from where we are, and yet it's so far in some ways, right? So it was a very magical experience, and one that I look forward to someday, whenever that is, doing again, and bringing another group along with me. So looking forward to that. Yeah. So thank you for taking the time to go through. It's nice to revisit that wonderful experience, and I'm hoping that the people that joined us today really enjoyed it. And of course, people can view it afterward too. And I'll definitely, if the women that weren't on board with us, I didn't have a chance today because it is a bit of an awkward time, I'll share it with them and they can revisit our experience.
Yeah, what a treat to reconnect with you today and to chat and to share this, and you pinned it. It's that gratitude, reverence, and we use the three words: connect, experience, refresh, and so that refreshing connection. So much more than kayaking.
So much more than kayaking. There's another line for you.
Well, we once played with that. Personalized kayaking adventures, so much more than kayaking.
Yeah.
It goes on and on.
Yeah, you could keep going, right? So,
yeah,
well, thanks again, Dave, and thanks everybody for joining us today. And we will have next week another show. And next week we're actually going to be revisiting an experience that I actually did as well. And we were on Amma Waterways cruise in the Mekong. I don't know, it's a year and a half or so ago now, and an absolutely magical experience, and one that I look forward to revisiting again. So we'll have Shauna Carter with that. And other than that, it's over and out for today. And thanks again, Dave and Kathy, for being on today.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll see you soon. And hope to see you soon this year.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Okay, take care.